Unit 5, Cost Management Scenario Walkthrough. In this walkthrough, we will see cost management in practice with the PTB. Begin by opening the scenario elearning/walkthroughs/unit5.scm. This scenario deals with building an electrical transformation plant as we've previously seen. However, this scenario concentrates on budget and cost. After opening the scenario, we can see the current cash, $8,000, which is also the starting cash. Our target cost is $110,000. The target is not only to complete the project successfully and on time, but also to make a profit. In the PTB, besides the initial cash, there are two more possible sources of income. The first is income received if the project is finished before the target date. To see this information, click on the Scenario Info button. In this scenario, our target date is 31, and if we finish the project before that time period, we will receive a bonus of $2,500 per each period we are early. The second source of income is finishing activities that are milestone activities. To see if finishing an activity will generate an income, click on it. Click on task HV Switchboards. This is a milestone activity, and once we finish it, we will receive $5,000 income. There are 6 types of costs in the PTB. The first is the penalty incurred if the project is late. We can see this by clicking on the Scenario Info button. For every time period we are late past the target date of 31, we will have to pay $5,000 per period. The second type of cost is the fixed cost of executing a task. Let's click on the Task HV Switchboards. Each mode has an associated fixed cost. For example, mode Subcontractor A has a fixed cost of $7,000. This means that if we choose to execute this task in mode Subcontractor A, once the task starts, we will have to pay a one-time sum of $7,000. The fixed cost for each mode typically represents costs of items that are needed in a fixed quantity. The consumption and cost of these items is not a function of the activity duration. The third type is the cost of splitting activities. This is due to the cost of transferring resources back and forth from one task to another. This cost changes from activity to activity. We will have to pay it only if we split the task, as we've seen in Unit 4. The cost is incurred once for each split. In the case of task HV Switchboards, the split cost is 1. The fourth type of cost is the cost for the resources we use. Each activity mode is characterized by the resources needed to perform the activity in that mode. In the task HV Switchboards, the mode Subcontractor A requires 5 resources of type Worker. This implies that if we choose to execute this task in mode Subcontractor A, then it will require 5 resource units of this type for each time period the task is running. Click on the Resource Information button to see the cost per period for the worker resource type. The cost is $450. In our example, if we choose mode Subcontractor A, which requires 5 resource units of this type, then for each time period the task is running, we will pay $450 times 5, or $2,250. The fifth type of cost is the cost of idle resources. This is calculated for the entire scenario. For a given time period, we subtract the number of resource units we use of a specific resource type from the amount we have available. For the worker resource type, we have to pay 100 per period for each idle resource unit. The sixth type of cost is the cost of assigning and releasing resources. If we choose to assign or release resources, there is a cost incurred per unit assigned or released. In the case of the worker resource type, this cost is 30. If, for example, we assign 3 more units of this type, the assigning will cost 90. Create a naive plan for the project by clicking the Plan Default button. Once we have a plan, more information is available to us. We can see that according to our current plan, the estimated cost for the project is $105,000. This is only an estimate that does not take into account the stochastic nature of the project, activity splitting, and assigning or releasing of resources. Click the Cumulative button to see the cumulative cash flow chart. In this view, we see what the expected cash position will be in each time period. A green bar denotes we will have a positive cash position at that period. A red bar denotes our cash position will be negative. In the PTB, once the cash flow runs negative, the project goes bankrupt and the user has to restart the simulation. According to the default plan we created, we can see that we are expected to go bankrupt in time period 4. We can also see the periodical cash flow chart by clicking the Periodical button. In this view, we see what the total cash flow per each period is. A green bar denotes a total income for that period, while a red bar denotes a total cost for that period. For example, we can see that in the first time period, our cash flow is negative $2,750, i.e., we will spend $2,750. The detailed budget view gives us comprehensive cost and income information. Click the Detailed button to see it. In this table, we can see, for each time period, the exact income and cost as well as a total for that time period and the cash position. For past time periods, this is actual information. For future time periods, this is only an estimate. We can see that in the first time period there is a fixed cost of $1,200, resource cost of $1,350, and idle cost of $200. This sums up to a total cost of $2,750. Because our starting cash is $8,000, the cash at the end of the first time period will be $8,000 minus $2,750, which is $5,250. Let's analyze these costs. Switch to the Gantt view. 3 tasks are scheduled to start in the first time period: build construction, HV switchboards, and LV switchboards. Build construction has a 0 fixed cost. HV switchboards in the selected mode has a fixed cost of $500, and LV switchboards in the selected mode has a fixed cost of $700. This is the reason the total fixed cost is $1,200. Let's calculate the resource costs. The task Build Construction does not use any resources. The task HV Switchboards in the selected mode uses 2 units of type Worker. The task LV Switchboards in the selected mode uses 1 unit of type Worker. Altogether, 3 resource units of type Worker will be used in this time period. Click the Resource Information button. The cost per period for this resource unit is $450. For this reason, the total resource cost for this time period is 3 times $450, or $1,350. There are no idle resource units for resource type worker since we have 1 unit available and our plan requires 3. However, no resource units of type LT or HT are used. We have 1 unit available of each type. Therefore, these 2 resource units will be idle in this time period. The idle cost per unit per period is 100, which explains the 200 idle costs for the period. Try to run the scenario by pressing the Run button. We get a message that we don't have enough resources of type worker. We switch to the resource usage view for this resource type. We can see that we only have 1 worker while our plan requires 3. Let's assign 2 more units. The 2 assigned units will only be available in the next time period. We have to delay the tasks using this resource by 1 time period. Switch to the Gantt chart and delay the tasks LV switchboards and HV switchboards so they start at time period 1 instead of time period 0. Now, go back to the resource usage for worker. There are enough resources of this type. Run the simulation for a few time periods. 1 or more of the workers did not show up and we cannot continue running the simulation. This is because the worker resource type has an 80% show-up probability. In case some of the tasks using this resource did not start yet, we can delay their start time. Otherwise, we have to split the task as we saw in previous units. If we continue to run the simulation with this plan, we will go bankrupt and be forced to restart the simulation. Now that you understand cost management, your assignment is to successfully manage this project. Open the scenario elearning/exercises/unit5.scn and create a new plan for it. You probably already noticed that this scenario is more complex than the ones we've seen before. It has tight budget constraints. You will have to be careful not to run into a negative cash position and go bankrupt. You can do this by delaying non-critical tasks, which are expensive, as well as by executing milestone tasks as early as possible to receive the income of the milestone. Another thing to keep in mind is resource management. If there are idle resources, consider if it would be cheaper to release them and reassign them later when they are needed. Consider the cost of keeping a resource buffer and minimizing the risk of being forced to split and delay tasks. Try to finish the project before the due date and receive the associated bonus. If a task is not critical, consider executing it in a cheaper mode with a longer duration. You have to contemplate the trade-off between budget and scheduling constraints. Good luck!